was wanted, dead or alive, for more than a decade. Tonight on Panorama, the full story of how America tracked down and killed its enemy number one.
We can say to those families who have lost loved ones to Al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done.
It was the most daring raid. US Navy SEALs stormed Osama bin Laden's secret hideout.
None of the good guys getting injured or killed, to me, is like the ultimate dream on.
Just how did bin Laden manage to live for 5 years right under the nose of the Pakistan military?
We have caught them red-handed in something that is almost impossible for them to lie about.
As far as I know, there has been no double game.
From this house, it's claimed the leader of Al-Qaeda directed terror attacks around the world. Will his death now make us any safer? It was called Operation Geronimo, the mission to find the man who'd eluded the world's most powerful nation and 3 American presidents. Helicopters would fly a crack team of US Navy SEALs under cover of darkness into the heart of Pakistan. If anything leaked out, it could end in disaster, with many Americans killed, and once again, bin Laden could escape. Pakistan's government wasn't told about the raid. One man knows all about such missions. He served in the elite group of special forces who carried out this operation. Navy SEAL Team 6.
You know, I think President Obama did a good job not clearing us with the Pakistanis. Loose lips, sink ships. You've got to get in the target, get rid of somebody evil, and try not to get any of your guys killed in the process.
The Americans set off from an airbase in Afghanistan. The hope was that this time they'd get bin Laden. Their intelligence indicated he was hiding close to Islamabad, the Pakistani capital, in the town of Abbottabad. I'm on my way to Abbottabad. It's only about 80 miles from Islamabad. High in the hills, the town is cool and green, a place for holidays. It's bristling with army installations, including Pakistan's military academy, the country's equivalent of Sandhurst. Bin Laden's hideout is only half a mile away. Well, here we are. This is the area where Osama bin Laden remained below the radar so effectively for so long. It's quiet, prosperous, middle class, and because of the high level of military installations, it's very secure. It's the one place that bin Laden felt sure of being protected from foreign spies and US attacks from the sky. Well, this is the entrance to the actual compound area. It's sealed off by the police at the moment. We're having to walk through. As I arrived, the police were letting the curious crowd go down to bin Laden's compound. It's fast becoming a tourist attraction. The compound, hidden by high walls, was built 6 years ago by 2 brothers, outsiders from the tribal region to the north. Bin Laden's nearest neighbor, Zian Mohammed, lives with his family just a few yards from Osama's front door. Who was in the compound? Did you have any connections with them?
नहीं जी उन्हें तो पढ़ता है ऐसा मतलब अंदर ना छोड़ दें तो ना वो किसी से काट दें अरशद तारक खान बस ये 2 खान हैं 2 बंदे मतलब.
The rumor was that the men who said they were Arshad and Tariq Khan were smugglers. The compound was the biggest in the area.
साड़ी बच्ची की शादी हुई है बुलाया नहीं आए वो बड़े लोग के मतलब नहीं आए माल में फेंची उन्होंने गां रखी दिए बाकी वो आप खुद संभालते 12 आदमी फालतू उन्होंने छोड़ा ही नहीं है पर्दे बाहर का आ रहे गेट तो बाहर अंदर उन्होंने कोई बंदा नहीं छोड़ा साढ़े सामने.
Veiled women would sometimes be driven in and out of the compound in a Suzuki Jeep. On the wall, the gas meters show that not 2, but 4 families lived at the property. The compound had a 3-story villa with a second building in the grounds. The 14-foot walls were topped by barbed wire. The only way in was through 2 security gates in a long alleyway. Bin Laden and his family are believed to have moved in by the start of 2006. The men who called themselves Arshad and Tariq lived in the smaller building with their families. Bin Laden, with 3 of his wives and a young daughter, was living in the main building, and an older son and his wife too, on the 2nd and 3rd floors. It's not what the CIA had thought.
Surprise would be the word I would use. Many of us expected that he would be found in a house somewhere, but probably in a village, in a small place where there is very little government presence.
For years, the search for bin Laden had been fruitless, despite a $25 million bounty on his head. In the months after 9/11, I went to Tora Bora, to the very caves high in the Afghan mountains where he'd lived. This was the last place he was known to be, nearly 10 years ago. US and British special forces had him surrounded after the collapse of the Taliban regime.
The very top up there, that's supposedly where bin Laden's hanging out.
But warlords helped him escape. Bin Laden was on the run for nearly a decade. The man who ran the CIA unit, set up to hunt bin Laden down, now believes that his quarry still played a hands-on role running Al-Qaeda.
He had to communicate with his people. He was far more than a figurehead. He was controlling, or at least participating in the planning of operations and the conduct of organizational activities. You can't do that from the back of a 4x4 running around the country hiding.
Holed up in the Abbottabad compound, bin Laden made his last public video appearance, which Al-Qaeda released in 2007.
أيها الشعب الأمريكي حديثي هذا لكم.
But his home movies, now revealed, show the real bin Laden, grey-haired, stuck indoors, flicking through television channels watching coverage of Al-Qaeda attacks. Very different from the man in the propaganda videos, dressed up in a gold robe, his beard dyed and neatly trimmed. But American intelligence now say bin Laden was more than just a figurehead, actively involved in many terror plots since 9/11. The Bali bombing, 202 people were killed. 192 in Madrid.
We have thick smoke coming from the tunnel.
And 52 dead in London on 7/7.
We're now Russell Square.
To lead effectively, bin Laden had to communicate with his followers without being discovered. He was very careful not to use phones or the internet. Instead, he relied on trusted messengers.
Couriers have been a part of Al-Qaeda since day one. They carry money, they carry jewels, they carry papers. Sometimes they carry messages that have never been written down and are just oral.
Since 9/11, the Americans had been building intelligence on bin Laden's couriers from militants they'd interrogated. The Pakistani intelligence services say they gave the CIA a tip-off, a cell phone number belonging to a man called Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. His international calls raised suspicions.
Especially people who were talking to Saudi Arabia, and if the telephone or the cell is from Pakistan, then we try to monitor that. And this is what would have happened, that some intercept would have been shared.
Last year, the CIA struck gold. The cell phone enabled them to track the courier, and he led them to the compound. Al-Kuwaiti turned out to be the man posing as Arshad Khan. His brother Tariq was Al-Qaeda too.
This is not an episode of 24. What happens is you get a lead, you start to figure out from travel data or from internet data, from phone data, who this person might be. You're chasing 1,000 guys like this every day, and you never know which one's going to be the diamond in the rough.
The CIA set up a safe house nearby to monitor the compound. They used thermal imaging and listening devices to try and find out who was in the villa. There was no phone or internet in the house, which was highly unusual. Rubbish was meticulously burnt instead of being put out in the street. The CIA came to realize there was a high-level target inside, even perhaps Osama bin Laden, but they couldn't be sure. President Obama now faced a big decision: whether to put American lives on the line to get bin Laden. Both Presidents Clinton and Bush had failed in their attempts to kill their elusive foe, using missiles or bomb strikes. Obama had made up his mind. Though he thought it was little more than 50-50 that bin Laden was there, it was worth the risk of sending in a team to make sure he didn't escape. On the moonless night of Sunday the 1st of May, around 20 Navy SEALs flew into Pakistan under the radar.
Your adrenaline is pumping, your vision's sharper, your hearing, all your senses are heightened.
Special forces landed from their stealth helicopters. One chopper was forced to land after a mechanical failure. The Navy SEALs immediately split into two teams. One group moved into the smaller building. They killed the courier Al-Kuwaiti after a short exchange of fire. And a woman was shot dead, caught in the crossfire. The second group quickly moved to the main building, searching for their target. On the first floor, they killed the courier's brother, and on the stairs, they shot bin Laden's son.
There's about 1 million things you have to think of, and you got literally tenths of a second to make that decision.
The SEALs moved towards the third floor bedroom. They came face to face with their quarry. It was Osama bin Laden.
Depending on what he does determines whether he gets shot or not.
His wife rushed forward and was shot in the leg. Bin Laden in his nightclothes was killed with 2 bullets. He's believed to have had an AK-47 nearby and a pistol, but never used them. In the White House, the president and his team were monitoring the attack as it unfolded. The news finally came that bin Laden was dead. It was greeted with silence, and then the president said, "We got him."
A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. After a firefight, they killed Osama bin Laden and took custody of his body.
There was euphoria on the streets of America, even though it was the middle of the night. By now, the Navy SEALs were safely out of Pakistan, taking bin Laden's corpse with them. The Pakistani police arrived to find a shocking scene at the compound. 4 bodies were strewn around. A dozen survivors, women and children, were taken into custody. Their accounts raised questions about American claims that there'd been a lengthy firefight. What really went on? How much resistance was there? Did bin Laden resist, or could he have been captured alive? Was this a mission to kill America's most wanted?
The fact that the SEALs killed bin Laden without apparently an effort to capture him suggests to me that this was much more of a kill operation than it was a capture operation.
The Americans now admit that in their initial account they overstated the resistance in the compound. bin Laden didn't fire a weapon or use his wife as a human shield. Some people reacted angrily, amongst them the Islamic parties in Pakistan itself. What's your reaction to the US raid and the killing of Osama bin Laden here in Pakistan?
Shock, grief, outrage. An unarmed person was killed. The United States has violated our sovereignty with impunity, with arrogance, disregard of international law.
This ain't a video game. You can't hit stop. So in years to come, you may look back and say, was the operation executed perfectly? And I'd say, looks good enough to me. I would not expect those kids who went in there, the Navy SEALs, to have done better. This is brilliant.
President Obama doesn't want to appear triumphant and risk inciting Muslims sympathetic to bin Laden. He made a trip to Ground Zero, however, after the raid, to honor bin Laden's victims and to meet their relatives. Among them, Jackie Eaton, who lost her British husband Robert in the North Tower at the World Trade Center. Nearly 10 years on, she has mixed feelings about bin Laden's death.
Our world is still not what it was, will never be, in my opinion. And it gives you a little bit of satisfaction to know that he is gone and he got his, but it's of little consolation, I think, to a lot of people who have lost loved ones. I still feel like he's spread his poison enough in this world now that our war on terror and our fight continues.
Since 9/11, the so-called war on terror has been at its fiercest in Pakistan. It's the heartland of Islamic extremists fighting the West and inflicting terror on Pakistan itself. 2 years ago, I was with the Pakistani army as they fought Al-Qaeda and local militants in the tribal areas. But it's a complicated story. Pakistan's intelligence service, the ISI, is accused of secretly supporting some of these groups to extend its influence in the region. Pakistanis, however, who've been at the heart of the search for bin Laden since 9/11, say they can be trusted. After all, they've arrested 5 of the top 10 Al-Qaeda figures caught so far.
9/11 was a tragic incident, and the people who did it, Pakistan has been helping the Americans to get hold of them. And I personally feel that, as far as I know, there has been no double game during my time. And the people from CIA, they would, I think, acknowledge it, that there had been no double game.
There's not only a problem with commitment to this fight, there's a problem with information sometimes going out the back door. That is, you provide information and a raid doesn't work because somebody's tipped off. But trust is not really the issue. We have no option. This is where Al-Qaeda operates. We've got to be there. And if we're going to be there, we better be there with the people who own the turf.
The fact that bin Laden was able to hide for so long in a Pakistani town with military connections has raised US suspicions he had to have some kind of local support network. For America, it justifies their lack of trust, their decision to keep Pakistan's government out of the loop. The Pakistani authorities have big questions to answer. Did their intelligence services know that bin Laden was here? And if not, why not? As the director of the CIA has said, either they're involved or they're incompetent.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people in the Pakistani army or ISI knew. I think there probably are people who knew where he was, and a great many more people who regarded him as a hero.
But Pakistan denies any official support, saying they've suffered more than anyone from Al-Qaeda.
Osama has never been a friendly man to Pakistan. And you know, we have this problem, and 32,000 people have died. And we know that the Taliban, Pakistani Taliban, they were supported by Al-Qaeda. And they've been targeting Pakistani cities, Pakistani army installation. So what could have been the real motive to keep him?
This whole thing's been a terrible embarrassment, hasn't it, for the ISI?
Yes, I think it is a terrible embarrassment, personally for me, and the things we had done, and you know, one incident, and everything is gone. But you should not degrade a nation, an emotional nation, you know, who are most of them anti-American.
But the ISI's pleas are falling on deaf ears. Some American politicians are calling for a radical rethink of the US relationship with Pakistan after bin Laden was discovered there.
They have been lying to us over the years, and if the radical Islamists to which the Pakistani government and the Pakistani military is allied are so important to them that they're willing to hide someone who slaughtered 3,000 Americans, well, let them deal with their own problems from now on. They aren't our friend. We shouldn't treat them as a friend.
Over $2 billion worth of military and civil aid is now at stake. That's what America gives Pakistan each year to prevent the world's only Islamic nuclear state from collapsing. And last month, Britain doubled its aid to £350 million a year. Almost half will be spent helping some of the 17 million children who cannot afford to go to school. Kids like Asif and Faisal. Their father earns just £1 a day as a labourer.
स्कूल में सही तरह पढ़ाई दे रहे हैं टीचर सही स्कूल में दिल भी लग रहा है तो
The boys have just been able to start school thanks to vouchers paid for by the British taxpayer. It's aimed at winning hearts and minds for the future.
I think this is the only factor which we can answer against terrorism. Education, education, education. It is a matter of life and death in Pakistan.
The lives of millions of poor Pakistanis could be affected because of what happened in Abbottabad.
We should cut off all of our aid to Pakistan. They have thumbed their nose at us and lied to us and aided those people who wanted to murder our people for 2 decades now. Now's the time, with the death of Osama bin Laden, to change our strategic relationship and quit acting like fools.
The Pakistanis quickly removed the debris from the compound. The crashed helicopter, which the Americans blew up when they left. Today, Pakistan's Prime Minister said the American allegations were absurd, but promised an investigation. Pakistan's now under immense scrutiny. They have to prove their commitment to the war on terror. If Osama bin Laden was able to live here in plain sight for such a long time, the question must be, who else is in Pakistan? What about Mullah Omar, the leader of the Taliban, whose men have killed so many British soldiers? Now America will expect Pakistan to deliver up the remaining top militant fugitives. President Obama is piling on the diplomatic pressure. But a year ago, his Secretary of State was explicit.
I'm not saying that they're at the highest levels, but I believe that somewhere in this government are people who know where Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda is, where Mullah Omar and the leadership of the Afghan Taliban is, and we expect more cooperation to help us bring to justice, capture or kill those who attacked us on 9/11.
In the raid, the Americans took away a treasure trove of material: mobile phones, computer hard drives and memory sticks. The US claim this new information shows bin Laden's been actively involved in planning terrorist operations. But it could also enable the Americans to pin down and go after the leader of the Afghan Taliban. And bin Laden's number 2, Ayman al-Zawahiri, who's likely to become al-Qaeda's new leader.
He's been there now for 8 or 9 years. He's up on the airwaves more with video than bin Laden is, and with radio interviews. That suggests to me that he's out more, that people might see him more. I think there should be a lot of questions as we continue a partnership with the Pakistanis about what they know about the 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th in command.
It's time for them to be afraid of us, okay? You are the terrorists. You are the people killing innocent people. So what you need to be afraid of is that next knock on the door might not be room service.
The Americans flew Osama bin Laden's body to an aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. It was washed and placed in a white sheet in accordance with Muslim practice. Then it was put into a weighted bag and lowered into the ocean. The Americans decided not to release any pictures because they could be inflammatory.
He has become a victim, a martyr.
A martyr?
Yeah. And the way they have tried to dispose of the body is against Islamic traditions, is against our religion, and I think it's against human rights.
Across Pakistan, so far, the protests against the American raid have been smaller than expected. But religious parties warn that Osama bin Laden's death won't stop militancy in Pakistan. Now, the killing of bin Laden, will it stop his appeal? Is that the end of militancy?
Not at all. That is the mistake, you see. It has never happened in history. Terrorism is the result of certain injustices, certain violations of human rights, certain political problems.
America hopes bin Laden's death will mark a turning point, the end of his reign of terror. But al-Qaeda will try to use his killing to keep the movement alive and inspire more attacks.
Al-Qaeda's message is dying, and it has been for some years, mostly because they've killed too many innocent Muslims. This will accelerate the death of the message, but it will not mean the end of the messengers who already believe.
Back at the infamous compound, bin Laden's neighbors are trying to get on with their lives. Al-Qaeda has confirmed their leader is dead, but has warned the killing is a curse which will haunt America. There is talk the Pakistani army will blow up this compound, removing a monument that has become a national embarrassment. But it will be harder to destroy Osama bin Laden's malign legacy. Next week, we investigate the illegal trade in electronic waste. How do our broken TVs end up on toxic dumps in West Africa?